really excited. I'm glad to see such a great turnout, considering the miserable weather, but it just goes to show how enthusiastic we are about data science here in Dublin. So there's just some information here on the screens behind me. So if you'd like to log in, the network, you want to sign in under Workday Guest, the password. We also have a Twitter account, if you'd like to tweet, that would be nice. And an Instagram account, which is run by Nina. Yep, just felt like shouting that one out. And you probably already know, but we also have a meetup page. But I imagine most of you are signed up, but just in case, we have our meetup page there. So just to get an idea, how many people have actually heard of PyData before? More than I was expecting. So for me, I had only heard of PyData this year. And one of the ways that I heard about it was I got invited to a conference in Berlin for PyData. And it was such an amazing experience that I really wanted to get involved. And I thought it was kind of crazy that Dublin, as the center of data science, doesn't have a meetup like this. So for anyone in the room, and sorry, I'm getting used to using a mic right now, so I'll try my best. So for anyone in the room that is a little still doesn't know what PyData is basically a community where we want to bring together users and developers of data analysis tools. And we want to learn and share ideas from each other. So one of the things as well is that we are language agnostic. So despite the name, it's PyData, one of the things that we are interested in is people who use OR, people who use Python, people who use Julia, Stan, C, any sort of language, who's interested in developing and maintaining the libraries that we use for visualization of data, management of data, processing, machine learning, gaining insights from data, analytics, everything. And that's one of the things I felt in Dublin that would be a nice place to set up. We have lots of different diverse meetups, but I think what we needed was somewhere where we could all meet together then and sort of share ideas. So one of the things about PyData is it's basically a part of an Unfocus group. So Unfocus is a group that raises money and tries to support the open source software that we use every day. So I have an example of a few of them there. I'm pretty sure most people would have heard of at least half of them and use them quite regularly. But what we forget is that they're open. We need to support these. If we want to be able to use them next week or the week after that, how do we maintain or keep these libraries open? And Unfocus is an initiative, a non-profit organization to try and support these projects so that we have them and we can sustain them into the future. So PyData is basically a part of Unfocus to bring these libraries and to educate people on how to use them and to share how we use them. And so naturally, it's global. Like everybody uses these libraries. We have 72 meetups with over 44,000 members in 33 different countries, and now we have one in Ireland. So with the Dublin PyData, we're bringing it to a global community, and we're sharing, we're getting so we have someone here who's actually helped to set up the PyData London meetup, and Ian would like to share a few words. They have over 5,000 members at the moment. It's mad.
Thanks, Siobhan. Yeah, I just want to share a little bit of the journey that PyData made in London, and whether we can replicate that here, because it was amazing to see that community start up. I think it was like almost 4 years ago now in London, starting from a base of just like having 30 people in the pivotal office where I worked in London, and it's now grown to 5,000 members. It's one of the biggest. I think it's the biggest PyData meetup in the world. It's one of the biggest Python meetups in the whole world as well. And what's really interesting is that they've been able to grow a community there. It's not like some meetups you go to where you come along, you hear a talk, and then you just go away again. Really, what they've built is a community, and I think what I'd love to see here for Dublin is that we build a similar community of data scientists who use the PyData stack, who use R, who use all those other things that Siobhan was talking about. And are able to do that in a way where we feel we're able to share our interests and our requests and our questions with the rest of the group here and more broadly, so that we can all learn from each other. And that's really the goal of this for me.
Yeah, so to summarize, we basically want to try and organize meetups monthly. We want to organize workshops. If there's interest in workshops, absolutely, we want to try and organize them. We're going to be upfront about the levels of the talks. So we realize that if we're bringing such a diverse community together, you need to be upfront and say, look, this is advanced this week, this is beginner this week. Again, just to reiterate, from every background, every type of language, whether you're a developer or a user, this is a place for you. And then also providing that connection to the global community, and then also providing the resources afterwards, the slides, the code, the tutorials, and hopefully a video on the YouTube channel. We have 2 cameras. Fingers crossed one of them gets this, and we're going to post it to the global PyData YouTube channel. So you can go back and listen to these talks again in your own time. So thank you to our speakers for agreeing to be recorded tonight. Our first speaker is Professor Barry Smith, and he is a director of the Insight Center for Data Analytics, and he currently holds the Digital Chair for Computer Science in UCD. He is a prolific researcher. He has over 400 papers peer-reviewed since 1992, and over 20 Best Paper Awards, which his work to date is based on one of those best papers, and I'm excited, so let's welcome Barry to
Thanks, Carl.
Just while we're getting set up, maybe before this comes on, maybe give us a brief intro into what you do at UCD.
Well, I wish my mother heard that introduction. I think she still thinks I'm failing college. I've been there for about 20 years. So I suppose I'm an AI researcher originally, but recently I've become a lot more interested in the data science side of things. So by day, I work in an area called recommender systems, which many of you will probably be familiar with, Amazon, Netflix, and the engines that drive their recommendations. And as you'll see, I'm also interested in marathon running. I need to get in front of the camera. Sorry. I tend to wander when I'm talking as well. That'll make it challenging for you. So I'm going to talk today about some work I've been doing recently on marathon running and applying some of these AI techniques to that. Do we have any runners in the house? Yeah? Anyone do Dublin this year? No? I'm going to ask how the training's going. So, I think you'll probably get a sense, running a marathon, let's just say that it's an interesting prospect, and it's probably one of the most painful things you're ever likely to do. And yet, every year, millions of people around the world tackle the 26.2 miles and the 42.2 kilometers on race day. And marathon runners are a very interesting data science subject because they tend to be quite obsessed with data and tips on how they can run better marathons. So this is one of the things that interested me in the area. At the same time, the whole recreational marathon running space has changed dramatically over the years, and now you wouldn't dream of going out training or racing without being strapped up with the latest wearable, at the very least having multiple apps on your phone, because God forbid you should do a run and it's not recorded. I think if that happens, you technically haven't done the run. So let's just say that there's a wide range of wearables and apps and all of the data that they are generating flowing into the world and is just asking to be picked up by motivated data scientists. I don't know this year if you've been tuned in as well to Nike's Breaking 2 project. Has anyone heard of that? So the big audacious goal for marathon runners is 2 hours. The current world record is just under 2 hours and 3 minutes, 2 hours and 2 minutes and 57 seconds. And Nike wanted to see if they could break 2 hours, and they artificially created sort of perfect marathon conditions earlier this year, but didn't quite make it. And Eliud Kipchoge ran it in 2 hours and 25 seconds. So not quite there, but I think people are no longer saying if it will be broken, or more often than not now we're talking about when the 2-hour barrier will be broken. And there's a great YouTube documentary that has just been released if you're interested in that. All this means that there's an awful lot of data being generated. I use Strava, other people will use Runkeeper, Map My Run, variety of apps. But to a large extent, most of these apps focus on recording and capturing the data, and they tell you what you've done and congratulate you on doing a great run, but to a large extent don't really help you understand how you can improve, and don't give you suggestions or recommendations about how might you improve. And this was an area that I was particularly interested in, to see whether we could use this data to help people run better marathons. So in this talk today, I want to talk about exactly what we've done there. So I'll talk about some of the data that we've collected and show you some samples of that data. I want to focus though on the prediction and recommendation task. So there's hundreds of marathons run every year. Most of those marathons make results data available to the public on their results site. So you go into the Dublin Marathon results site, you can see an archive of people's race data over the last 20 or so years. And of course then you can start to scrape this data. And that's what I've done for a large number of marathon sites around the world. Using Scrapey, which some of you might be familiar with, it's a very well-known Python scraping toolkit, really, really good, I think. Very configurable, very powerful, and was a big help in scraping this data at scale. The result is that we've been able to scrape about over 2.5 million different race records. And for each of those race records, we know who the runner is, we know their gender typically, we may know their age, the year of birth, we'll certainly know their age range, in 5-year increments. And we can use this to identify the same runner across multiple races, for example. Crucially, we know 5-kilometer splits for their races. So what this means is that every 5 kilometers they run across a timing mat on the race course, and we know their time for these 5-kilometer segments. So in addition to having a finish time for the race, we also have a time for 5K, 10K, 15K, all the way up to 42.2K. The last split is obviously only 2.2K. And we've got about 100 different races that have been scraped now over 20 cities. And for some cities, we've as much as 12 years data. For other cities, only a few years data. Really, the critical thing there was identifying cities that made 5-kilometer splits available. And what we wanted to do was figure out a sort of next generation running assistant. So using some of the AI tools and techniques and machine learning techniques that we use in other domains, such as recommender systems, and apply them to marathon running. And actually there's a wealth of opportunities to do this for marathon running. You could imagine developing more personalized and adaptive training programs that pay attention to the sessions you've been doing, how well you've been following the program, and maybe make adjustments if the system feels that you're struggling or you're finding it too easy. Fitness estimation and predicting the training load that someone is able to take on board is an important factor. You might imagine a recovery advisor to help people understand when they should back off their training to prevent injury, or perhaps detect the very early signs of injury. And injuries are a big problem, especially among recreational runners. What I'm going to talk about today is PB prediction, personal best prediction. So helping a runner figure out what time could I legitimately hope to achieve in this particular race, and hopefully a new personal best time. And also plan the race for them. So it's not just, here's the time you should aim for, give them a pacing profile through these 5-kilometer splits to tell them how fast they should begin the race, what speed they should be doing halfway through the race, how they might manage their speed towards the end of the race, etc. So we'll focus on that today, but there's many other applications of similar techniques in other aspects of someone's training and racing. So, as I said, there's 2 tasks that we're going to focus on here. Number 1, we want to predict a challenging but achievable personal best time for a runner. Okay, we don't want to make it too hard because bad things will happen. We don't make it too easy and they do it handily and feel that they haven't really achieved their best. And in addition to that, we want to recommend a race plan, the pace that they should be running for each of these 5K splits during the race. And if you've ever run a marathon or a half marathon, you'll often see people with their paces written on their wrist, or they'll get these wristbands which have their times for these different paces, but they're typically evenly paced races. You know, you divide your finish time up by the number of 5K segments and figure out a sort of evenly split pacing throughout the race. And obviously, races aren't like that. The courses aren't flat. You get tired towards the end of the race. You may prefer to run faster at the end and slower at the start, for example. So these more personalized and targeted racing plans can be a big help.
Well,
if you get it wrong, this is the sort of thing that can happen.
Has qualified for the World
This was the London Marathon this year. This poor chap
you can do it.
got his pacing wrong. This is towards the very end of the race. This is an excellent runner. He was finishing in under 3 hours, but clearly everything started to fall apart. So predicting a PB time that is too tough for someone and encouraging them to try and target that PB time can ruin their race entirely. So let me give you an example of how we do this prediction. So first of all, let's see. This work. I got this fancy new pointer. Wow. Is that cool? Yeah, Logitech. It's spotless, about 100 quid though. It's the first time I've used it. So that's just like that. So here's a race record. Here's the sort of data that we have for a person. We know that they finished in 4 hours and 8 minutes, and we know their paces through the various 5K segments. And here you can see they started fast, so minus 10% means that they went about 10 minutes faster than their average pace over the entire race, quite a bit too fast at the beginning, and they finished slowly. That's a typical profile for someone. It's not a great racing profile. You'd like to see a more controlled start and a faster finish, for example. That's the sort of record we have for individual races, for individual runners. And what we can build out of that is something called a race case. So we're going to be using case-based reasoning. I'll talk about what that means in a moment. But essentially, you can imagine, how does it know I'm pointing at that? You can imagine, here's a particular runner or, and they have 3 marathon records, M1, M2, and M3. Now we figure out that one of these records is their PB, it's their fastest marathon, so in this case 236 minutes. That's their PB race. These other 2 races are non-PB races, okay? And from those 3 races, we can generate 2 race cases. And in each race case, we pair their personal best race up with a non-personal best race. So essentially these cases capture the idea that here was a runner who ran this time and this pacing profile at one stage in their running career, and they later went on to achieve this personal best time and this racing profile. So these cases capture something about how much the runner improved over time. And then when it comes to making predictions, if we have our new runner here who has run at least 1 marathon in the past, so we have to have at least 1 race that they've run. In this case, 248 minutes is what they ran their marathon in. There's their profile for that. They want to know what personal best time might I be able to achieve. What we do is we compare this information to the cases in the case space, and we try to identify cases that have the closest matching non-PB parts to this race. So we're looking for other runners that ran in the region of 248 minutes with a similar sort of profile, fast start, slow finish. And then what we do, we get K of those similar runners, and we look at their PB components of their cases. And we see what they ultimately went on to achieve their PB. And we come up with a PB time for this particular runner based basically on a weighted average of the PB times for the similar runners who ran similar non-PB races in their past. So in this case, we're predicting a PB time for this runner of 237 minutes. Now we also pay attention to the profile of the PB races that these similar runners have used, when they ran their PBs, and we produce a race plan for this new runner based on essentially the average of those PB profiles. So we're saying to this runner, you should be able to achieve 237 minutes, all going well, and here's your race plan. So don't start too fast. You'll probably start a little bit fast and you'll finish a little bit slower, but here's your individual paces for those 5K segments. So they will essentially get a set of numbers, which are their paces for each of those 5K segments. So that's a classic sort of case-based reasoning or K-nearest neighbors type approach to prediction. Now, and just to summarize, the key point here is that each of our cases for a given runner have 2 races encoded in them. One of them is the personal best race for that runner, and one of them is the non-personal best race for that runner. Those arrows are the wrong way around.
Sorry.
Yeah.
How did you establish that the non-best case is correlated with the best case?
It's the same runner.
I know. Well,
So you don't know. You don't know. It could be that was a disastrous race that I had in the past.
Or they follow someone else.
Yeah, you don't know.
So you just, okay.
Yeah. So, but what you're doing is each of these cases capture for a runner maybe multiple times if they've run lots of races. You know that they at some point they went from this type of time and this type of race to this type of time.
Or a period of 12 years.
Yeah, you capture the years as well. So that's encoded in the features. Now, that's a K&N type approach. Retrieve K similar cases, make your predictions there. You can also use linear regression type techniques, so we've done that. Elastic nets, random forests. There's a whole range of machine learning techniques that you could use to make those predictions. I won't go into the detail on those, but they follow a similar sort of approach. The key point is, once we have a predicted personal best time, we can then go and generate a personalized race plan, as I mentioned, for that runner. Because with that personal best time, we can go back into the case base, back into our records, find a set of cases that have run similar times to that predicted personal best, look at their pacing profiles or their race plans, and get an average of those pace plans in a fairly simple way. So I'm going to describe one of the evaluations that we've done on this. So the question is, does this produce accurate personal best predictions and sensible race plans? Now, one of the problems is, what you'd love to do is you'd love to take a bunch of runners who are about to run their next race, give them these predictions, give them the race plan, hope that they follow them, and then get them to report back. You know, so sort of live user trial. You can rarely do that, or at least it's very difficult to do it. In the alternative, what we usually do is do some sort of tenfold cross-validation or leave one out testing. And that's the approach that I'm going to describe here. This is based on races from the Chicago Marathon dataset. So we've also done it for London and New York and Boston. Similar results are obtained. But it means that we're only looking at Chicago as the basis for our race data. It would be interesting to see whether you could predict Chicago personal best times if that runner has run London or Boston or Tokyo, for example. That's for future work. In the Chicago data set, we have about 12 years of data, nearly 400,000 race records. We're able to produce about 100,000 of these cases because not every runner has run at least 2 races, for example, so you can't use every single runner. But we're able to produce nearly 100,000 of these pairs of non-PB, PB cases. And we adopt a tenfold cross-validation, so we essentially take out 10% of that data as test data, leave the other 90% in as training data. For each of those test cases, we know their PB times, we try to predict a PB time from their non-PB component, and then we compare that predicted time to their actual PB time. We also know the race plan that they ran that PB race in, and we compare the recommended or the predicted race plan to that PV race